Every argument you lost your composure in. Every conflict where words spilled from your mouth like water through cracked stone. Every moment you raised your voice, explained yourself, justified your position to someone who never deserved the breath it cost you. You handed them everything, your dignity, your authority, your silence, the only currency that ever truly mattered. And the worst part? You felt it afterward. That hollow sickness in your chest when the argument ended and you replayed every word you should have swallowed. That shame that crept through you at 3 a.m. when you realized you had exposed your wounds to someone who will use them as weapons. You gave them the blade. You showed them exactly where to cut. This is the pattern of weak men throughout history. They erupt, they defend, they explain. And then they spend hours, sometimes days, hating themselves for the power they leaked in 60 seconds of emotional collapse. Tonight, that cycle ends. Tonight, you master the transformation that separates the men who are remembered from the men who are forgotten. The art of speaking only when empires fall. Once you grasp this, no argument, no conflict, no adversary will ever extract another drop of power from you again. You will become the silence that others dread, the void they cannot fill. The prince who watches thrones crumble while lesser men scream themselves hoarse. Authority anchor. In the dying light of the Venetian Republic, there was a doge who understood what most rulers never will. When crisis erupted in his council, when rivals screamed accusations and demanded responses, he offered nothing. Not defense, not attack, not a single syllable of explanation. He sat in shadow while the chamber descended into chaos, and he watched. His rivals, expecting resistance, received only stillness. They expected fire and found only ice, and in that void they began to devour themselves. They questioned their own accusations. They doubted their own intelligence. They filled his silence with their deepest fears. Within weeks, his enemies had destroyed each other. He never raised his voice once. Niccolò Machiavelli observed this pattern across the courts of Italy and wrote what most men are too weak to accept. The prince who speaks least rules longest. Words are commitments. Words are vulnerabilities. Words are threads your enemies will use to strangle you when the moment serves them. Sun Tzu understood this 5 centuries before Machiavelli drew breath. In war, he wrote, "The supreme excellence is not victory through battle. It is victory through silence, through patience, through allowing the enemy to collapse under the weight of their own uncertainty." Most men today erupt like fools in conflict. They defend themselves to people who have already judged them. They explain their intentions to adversaries who seek only ammunition. They raise their voices as if volume equals power, when in truth, volume equals desperation. You will not be that man. Silence is your throne. The void is your dominion. And tonight, you learn to rule from shadow. Psychological revelation. Observe what unfolds in their mind when you withhold words in the heat of conflict. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. This is the clinical anatomy of psychological collapse, and you must understand it with the cold precision of a surgeon examining a corpse. When conflict erupts and you refuse to engage, when you offer only stillness, only silence, only that impenetrable absence of reaction, something breaks inside them. Their nervous system, primed for battle, receives no enemy to fight. Their amygdala floods with cortisol, preparing for an attack that never comes. And in that vacuum, their own mind becomes the enemy. Watch what happens in the hours after you refuse to respond. They replay the encounter obsessively. They analyze your expression for meaning that was never there. They draft messages they will never send, responses to things you never said. They hate their own uncertainty. They question whether they were right. They begin to wonder if you know something they do not. If you are 3 moves ahead in a game they are only beginning to understand. And this is the mechanism of psychological dominion. The human mind cannot tolerate a void. It must fill silence with meaning. And when you offer nothing, no defense, no attack, no emotion, they fill that emptiness with their own fear. They project onto your stillness every threat they have ever imagined. They make you larger in their mind than you could ever make yourself through words. Meanwhile, you remain untouched. Their pulse races while yours stays steady. Their thoughts spiral while yours remain clear. Their nights become restless while you sleep in cold peace. You have become the silence that echoes in their skull, inescapable, unrelenting, eternal. They will remember your stillness long after they have forgotten every word they screamed into the void. This is not cruelty. This is architecture. You are simply building your fortress from the bricks of their own insecurity. Tactical breakdown: 6 ways to wield silence as a blade in conflict. 1. When provoked, do not respond. Let the silence stretch until it becomes unbearable. The moment someone attacks you, verbally, emotionally, through accusation or insult, your instinct will scream for response. Kill that instinct. Let their words hang in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Let seconds stretch into an eternity. Watch their confidence flicker as they realize their attack produced no wound. Machiavelli noted that princes who respond to every slight become slaves to their critics. The prince who ignores the barking of dogs walks undisturbed toward his throne. This is how silence carves fear. 2. Never explain yourself to those who have already decided to misunderstand. Explanation is surrender. The moment you justify your actions, you acknowledge that their judgment holds weight. You elevate their opinion to a position it never deserved. You transform yourself from sovereign into defendant, and them from accuser into judge. Sun Tzu wrote that to defend everywhere is to defend nowhere. The same applies to words. To explain everything is to explain nothing. Your silence is not rudeness. It is the declaration that their misunderstanding is their burden to carry, not yours. Like a king who lets the court argue while he watches from shadow, you observe. You calculate. You never descend into the arena. This is how silence carves fear. 3. When they demand closure, offer only absence. Nothing tortures the emotional mind like unfinished business. When someone craves your acknowledgement, an apology, an explanation, a final word, your refusal to provide it becomes a splinter in their thoughts they cannot remove. The ancient princes of China understood this intimately. They would sometimes refuse to meet with foreign envoys for weeks, allowing the ambassadors to stew in uncertainty, to question their own worth, to become so desperate for audience that they would accept any terms. Your silence is not passive. It is the most aggressive act possible. It denies them the resolution they crave. It leaves the wound open and salted. This is how silence carves fear. 4. In the heat of argument, become still. Let your body speak the coldness your words will not. When voices rise around you, drop yours to nothing. While others gesture wildly, let your hands rest motionless. While their faces contort with emotion, let yours become marble, expressionless, unreadable, cold as the void between stars. The body remembers what the mind forgets. When they recall this moment, they will not remember what was said. They will remember how you looked at them. They will remember the chill of your stillness. They will remember feeling, for the first time, that they were entirely outmatched by someone who refused to compete. This is how silence carves fear. 5. Never reveal your calculations. Let them wonder eternally what moves behind your eyes. Machiavelli wrote that men should be either caressed or eliminated. They must never know which fate awaits them until it arrives. The same applies to your intentions. When others cannot read you, they cannot oppose you. When your silence conceals your strategy, their attempts to counter you become wild swings in darkness. Speak your plans to no one. React to nothing until action is necessary. Let them see only stillness while beneath, you calculate with ruthless precision. Like the assassin who smiles at his target hours before the blade finds its home, your silence is not emptiness. It is the concealment of inevitable victory. This is how silence carves fear. 6. Speak only when your words will end worlds. The prince who speaks only when empires fall understands the sacred weight of utterance. Every word you release must carry consequence. Every sentence must be a verdict, not a plea. Every time you break silence, it must be to declare outcomes, not to negotiate them. Sun Tzu taught that the supreme warrior subdues enemies without fighting. The supreme prince subdues courts without speaking. And when he speaks, it is only to announce what silence has already accomplished. Wait until victory is certain. Wait until resistance is futile. Wait until your word is not argument but inevitability. Then speak, and let your voice be the final echo before the empire crumbles. This is how silence carves fear. Transformation. Declaration, the ascension. You now possess 6 blades most men will never sharpen. The blade of non-response, the blade of unexplained action, the blade of withheld closure, the blade of physical stillness, the blade of concealed calculation, the blade of calculated utterance. Wield them coldly. Wield them without mercy. Wield them in utter silence. You no longer react. You no longer explain. You no longer bleed in conflict. When provocation comes, you remain stone. When accusations fly, you offer only shadow. When they scream into the void, you become the void that swallows their screams whole. This is the moment you cease being the fool who argues, the weak man who defends, explains, justifies, hemorrhages power with every syllable. This is the moment you become something else entirely. You become the silence that haunts their nights, the absence that speaks louder than their noise, the shadow that commands without gesture. You are now untouchable. You are now silent. You are now sovereign. No conflict will break you. No argument will expose you. No adversary will ever again witness your composure crack. You have ascended beyond the realm of reaction, into the cold dominion of calculated stillness. The prince who speaks only when empires fall has awakened. Ritual, call to action. If this cut deep, if you felt the blade of recognition slice through years of weakness, inscribe this in the comments. Empires fall in silence. Seal it. Mark this moment. Let those words be the tombstone of the old, reactive, bleeding version of you. Like this video. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications. There are depths we have not yet plumbed together. Vaults of power we have not yet unlocked. Weak men will argue with the screen and scroll. They will leave defensive comments justifying why this does not apply to them. They will prove their weakness in the very act of resisting what they know to be true. Powerful men will act in silence. They will watch. They will absorb. They will implement without announcement. And months from now, they will look back and recognize this night as the turning point. Which one are you? The court is watching. The rivals are calculating. The empire awaits its prince. And in the void of your words, the silence that now lives where weakness once bled, something ancient and inevitable has taken root. Something that does not explain, something that does not defend, something that rules from shadow and speaks only to announce what the darkness has already decreed. Listen closely to that silence. It is the sound of power finally returning home.